Hi, I'm Steve Weiner. You have no idea who I am, but watch the Mike Chisholm show because no one knows who he is either.
La, la, la. Welcome once again to the Letterman Podcast. My name is Mike Chisholm. Today we got Steve Weiner, the return of Steve Weiner, three-timer. He's a three-timer. He's joined the three-timer club. Two comedy writers named Steve in the three-timer club. Is that Darren Cox may have appeared 3 times. Yeah, I think he probably has. I'm trying to think of who else in the three-timer club. Anyway, Steve Weiner, again, go back and watch his first 2 episodes, especially for those who like Late Night with David Letterman, because Steve was there at the very beginning. And I love Steve. I love Steve and his wife, Lori. Candy and I have become very, very good friends with them, and they're just heart friends. Now the timing, of course, it's not coincidental. We had a really amazing phone conversation on March 10th, and March 10th is the anniversary of Rick Scheckman's passing. I wouldn't know Steve if it wasn't for Rick. And we've talked about Rick, and he's a huge part of this show. And so the conversation that I have with Steve is it's got a lot of Rick in it, and we're gonna show a clip. Actually, we got some permission, and so thank you very much for that permission, to show a clip from Scheckfest. That was Rick's memorial. I highly recommend everybody go on to the Letterman channel and look for Rick Scheckman's memorial on Scheckfest. I think it's about a 40-minute video or something like that. It might even be a little longer than that. And it's the entire service, and it's so good. And there's so many videos that are sent in by Letterman alumni, but also the other areas of Rick's life. And the clip that we're going to show is actually the clip of Alex Bennett. And in it, he talks about Steve Weiner. It'll make sense. It's going to be inserted right into the perfect part of the episode where we talk about that. And then we go into other stuff too, of course. We talk about Steve, and he compares when he was at the Mickey Mouse Club to Letterman. And it's a lot of very cool, apt comparisons. He got the gig there because he worked for Letterman. He and Carl Tiedemann worked for Letterman. And it's a catch-up session with a couple of friends. Now, this is uncharted water for me in this regard. I gotta issue an apology. I'm not sure. I don't know, but I want to err on the side of caution. And I want to talk about something else that happened in the Letterman mythos this week, and it's going to be inelegant, and I apologize for that, but I'm just going to do it. The day that Rick passed was March 10th. March 10th is my birthday, and I'm not a big birthday surprise. If you go back, I tell the whole story in the tribute episode I did for Rick last year, but I'm glad that I will always. I'm not a huge birthday guy. I don't celebrate my birthday very much, and I'm really glad that I'm gonna know every year the day that Rick passed. And my goal is that every year on that day, I'm gonna talk to people who knew him. I'm gonna say something about Rick. Rick was all about transferring knowledge. He was one of the world's foremost cinephiles. And old Hollywood knowledge, the amount of old Hollywood knowledge that was in his head is just, in some circles, I would say unparalleled, and not be exaggerating when I say that. And so he likes to transfer the knowledge. I'm going to transfer the knowledge of Rick. I'm going to transfer the knowledge of the gratefulness I feel for him, of what he did for this show. The show wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Rick, and his friendship. And he and I have, we got to know each other during the pandemic, and I just appreciate him so much, and I will always do that. And on my birthday, on that day, I will always want to say something about Rick. So that day was a melancholy day, and Steve Weiner and I had a really nice phone conversation. Steve and Lori and I had a really nice phone conversation that day, and a couple other people who knew Rick and I connected back and forth in a few different ways. And it was Oscar day. And so we're watching the Oscars, some of us on PVR, some of us live, or DVR. We call them PVRs up here in Canada, DVR. But anyway, so we're watching the Oscars, and we're going back and forth, and we're talking about Rick. And suddenly, I get a couple messages at the same time from a couple different people that Jerry Foley had passed away. And now I'm going to say this. Please go to the Letterman channel and watch 2 things. Jerry Foley's favorite moments, and then the retrospective that Walter put up. I am so grateful he has this footage. Oh my goodness, am I grateful that he had this footage of Jerry And I met Jerry in person twice, and we exchanged probably half a dozen to a dozen emails back and forth, all complimentary, by the way. Jerry just, he's a little shy about coming on here, but he was getting around to it. In fact, not to tell tales out of school, there's a decent chance that he was going to be our 2-year anniversary guest. Minor in comparison to how the sorrow that we feel for all of the friends and family for Jerry Foley. It was a gut punch to see that he had unexpectedly passed away. And I'm the empathy and sympathy that I feel for everybody who knew him, whether it was personally or professionally, is boy, oh boy, was it ever sad. And it was weird because we were reflecting on Rick, a few of us, and then suddenly it was like, oh my God, this happened. And people started posting about it on social media. This is where I'm gonna apologize. I'm just gonna, as people were saying it, there was a couple little pieces of misinformation that were possibly going to get out there and whatnot, and so I put a post up in the Letterman Podcast Facebook group, and it was just simply, you know what, I can even throw it out there and read it, because it's true to this day. It's exactly the words that I felt and wanted to say, but where I feel like the apology is necessary is that it might have been premature. It might have been better to wait for other people to post, even though when we posted this, a lot of folks were already posting stuff on Facebook about Jerry's passing, and we just kind of weighed in. And this was the message that we put. We've just received word that legendary Letterman director Jerry Foley has passed away suddenly. We're devastated by this news. We will certainly be a venue for any and all that want to send well wishes and empathy to the entire David Letterman family from the David Letterman fans. Thanks to Tom Yang for the photo. There's a photo of Richard Simmons giving Jerry Foley a kiss, and Jerry with a big grin on his face, but kind of, it's a very funny photo. And anyway, we just talked about that. And then I said, can someone please post a photo of Jerry and Rick Scheckman? They passed away on the same day. But when I posted that, I thought it was okay to do that because lots of other people were posting and whatnot. And we just wanted to, man, alive. I was getting a whole bunch of messages from people. And it was just one of those things where it's like, oh, what do you do? And when somebody passes away, and not making this about me or us, except for the fact that it's like, oh, us posting that, it might have been premature. And if it was, I apologize for that. It certainly wasn't out of a need for any sort of self-aggrandizing or anything like that. That wasn't what it was about, even a little bit. And I'm really, I feel terrible that he's gone. This is a guy who took over for Hal Gurney. I mean, and when you watch the footage that Walter and company shot on the Letterman channel, he tells the story. And I'm so grateful that he was there to tell the story, because how do you fill those shoes? And he tells the story of how he got there. He was at Live at 5. How cool is that? He was at Live at 5, and he wanted to see what was going on at the Letterman side. Like he said, I believe the analogy he uses, like a kid with his face pressed up against the glass because he was doing a news show, and over there they've got a llama, the Letterman across the hall. And I can relate to that so much, and I think so many of us can relate to that so much. You just wanted to be part of that club, and he wanted to be part of it by joining the family, by actually using his amazing skills to be part of that. And he got in there as the technical director. And he talks about when the show moved to CBS and the big risk that it was for him to move from a career standpoint, potentially, because it wasn't a guarantee that the CBS show was going to go long term, and he had all the seniority and all that. And then he talked about the honor of taking over for Hal and how it happened. And I'm so glad that his story is out there. We've talked a lot about him, about Jerry, and tangentially, if you want to go down a rabbit hole, Tim Kennedy's episode, Amy Sharon Humes's episode, Daniel Flaherty's episode, and they were all right around each other. He talked about Jerry a lot in those, and I think it's just good that we remember this stuff. And I feel terrible that this happened. I feel terrible for everybody who is feeling this loss. And I just want to say, we're sending you as much positive energy as we possibly can. Boy, Mike, great. Be the downer. How can we replace this? You know what made Rick mad? This made Rick mad. And I enjoyed making, I didn't enjoy making Rick upset, but this is Sarah Palin to the Letterman Podcast. Good luck with this. I used to have this on the set. One time Rick got upset with me about this show. He would always give me notes and things. And one of the notes that was the most stern was, he told me in other words to get that picture off the set, which I can still go back to, and I can remember that. And I miss Rick very, very much. And March 10th is a weird day now in this Letterman world. And I just, I'm grateful that I have a place that I can kind of talk about it, and some people will understand. And for those who don't, that's okay. You enjoy the conversation with Steve Weiner. It's hilarious. Steve is one of my favorite people. He can make me, a bunch of these writers that I've become friends with can make me belly laugh. Steve Young can do it, and Steve O'Donnell can do it. Steve Weiner can do it, and then others as well can do it as well. But it was really nice being able to connect with my friend and talk a little bit about our friend. And we miss you, Rick. We miss you. Please enjoy this episode of the Letterman Podcast featuring Steve Weiner. My friend, it is so good to see you again. I appreciate you so much. And you and your girl, I don't know if she's around today or if she's out putting the broad in Broadway. Is she?
She's careful. She's hiding backstage and back in her room.
So am I allowed to say that? I certainly am. I'm certainly not the first person to say, did she put the broad in Broadway? That's
it's a joke on the line.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah. It's so good to see you. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you.
We had such a nice phone call the day of the Oscars. Did you watch the Oscars?
I did watch the Oscars.
That's it. You like old Hollywood, right? So have you watched every iteration of the Oscars basically back for the last 40, 50 years?
At least, I guess, as long as I've been alive, I have, yeah. I think I have. I can't remember any of them, but I saw them. Whenever they show the same clip of David Niven and the Streaker, I always remember that. So they seem to show that every year.
This year's offering.
It was a good, for them, it was a good show. It moved well. The Kimmel was reasonably funny. Yeah. There wasn't any. The only really bad thing is the in memoriam section, and they screw that up every year. And I don't know. Like a lot of people have said, I don't know why they just don't pay TCM to use their version, because they do it so damn well.
Yeah.
But that's the only thing that they mess up every single year, and the rest of the show was fine. So I thought they did a good job.
The in memoriam, the mess up that I've heard about is people were saying, okay, well, the camera kept cutting away from the people that were being memorialized. So
the camera was never near where the screen was. They were showing these dancers they had gotten, and really, who wants to see dancers? You want to see these people. And then they kept the last frame to put about like 20 more names all in one card, but they were so far away you couldn't begin to read them. So the whole thing seemed to me, it just seemed like a really badly handled thing. Yeah. The only thing they did right this year is they didn't. I think they had the mic off on the audience, because whenever they do that, it becomes a contest who gets more applause, and that's always pretty offensive, I think. And I don't think it was on either was not on this year, or they had told the audience strictly not to applaud, one or the other.
You and I talked about this just before we hit record and whatnot, but I think it's worth throwing out there because I mean, one of the things that the catalyst of us talking that day, it was the memoriam of 1 year memoriam of our boy Rick of Shecky's passing, and it's funny. Candy and I will watch the Academy Awards many times. We will
Right.
kind of skip through or whatever, but this year here, I was like, oh, is there a world where Rick Scheckman could be on the in memoriam part because of his being, I don't know if there's somebody who is more educated in old Hollywood living, in this time and place. Certainly with the perspective that he had, it would sure have been nice to see his name up there. But I guess do you have to be a member of the Academy for that, or?
No, I don't think so. But I think no, not at all, because they do for people all over the world who are not members of the American Academy. No,
Yeah,
I mean, I think Rick's part of film preservation was sort of under the radar, if you know what I mean, in the
yeah,
sense that he preserved film himself, but he didn't write about film, and he never taught about it, and he never. I mean, the things that would a film historian or a film archivist would do was a little outside of Rick's area. So I mean, it doesn't
right.
really surprise me that he wasn't there. I don't think it's a slight against him in any way.
No, of
But,
course not. Of course not.
I,
Um,
I mean, for example, I'll be interested to see if David Bordwell makes it next year. David Bordwell was a great film writer, wrote about and a great historian and a really great guy. He was also, when he just first started at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, he was my senior advisor for the thesis I wrote about Chuck Jones. So I knew him when he was very young, and I liked him very much. And everybody who's known him over the past, I don't want to say how many years, but a lot of years have all said he remained a really great guy. So it'll be interesting to see if he turns up in there, because I don't usually see critics,
yeah.
writers' names there. So that Rick would sort of fall in that broad category of the people who might be just under the radar. There's so many names they have to put up, and look, they miss some really major ones this year. So and they do it every year. They miss some major ones. So I don't think we can really hold them to account on this.
Yeah, it is a thankless job in so many ways because the glaring, they get so many people and it's like, oh yes, we got this one, we got this one, but the one that they miss is the one that they get recognized publicly for. I loved the monologues of for each actor, supporting actor.
Mm-hmm.
I loved the way that they described. You had a past nominee or a past winner come up
Right.
and describe the nominees in a very a well written way. I don't know who wrote this year's Oscars, but I thought they did a fantastic job in that aspect of it.
Yeah, they did. They did make the speeches that they gave to each actor seem personal to the actor who was saying it. So I would believe that at least they were involved, if they didn't write the final text, that they spoke to them perhaps, and before and the writer organized it into a speech. That would be my guess, since it had to be timed and put on the monitor.
Yeah.
So that would be my assumption of how it was done. But it came across very well. And I thought it was very good. The question is, if you do that every year, you're going to run out of people who are alive to do it at some point. But
Yep.
right now, it seemed to work very well. And they got a nice range of people from different eras too, and to do the presentations of the in that sequence.
I totally agreed, and I thought the music was really really good. I thought it was really neat how tongue in cheek they did the traditional Oscars piece, and it was Ken and but the
Mhm.
Ken Barbie song. I thought that was absolutely spectacular.
Yeah, they did a great
Um,
job.
yeah, and bringing in the old and the new together, and I thought like you say, Kimmel. Interesting thing about Kimmel ties Johnny Carson now. And I mean,
Hmm.
there's something that Jimmy Kimmel has. He's the elder statesman in late night now. Obviously, huge Dave worshiper,
Hmm.
and will probably call himself a student of Dave. And but then there's this thing that Johnny had from late
Hmm.
night hosts, and the idea that Kimmel is the guy. I mean, it probably doesn't hurt that the Oscars are on ABC,
It,
but
it totally explains why it's him. But that
well,
but
no,
that's
he
fine.
did good too, though. He
He
did.
did. No, he did. Absolutely, he did good. I mean, it's a tough gig, because there's a certain you can go so far and not too far. I mean, the thing is to balance everything off. You don't want to do what Dave did, which is to try to turn the Oscars into your show. So
Yes.
so I think he was wise to keep the Matt Damon joke to the very end. I mean,
Yeah.
'cause I don't watch his show. I mean, first time I ever heard that was running gag was on the Oscars, the first time he did it. So now I
Oh,
know it
that's
only
hilarious.
because of the Oscars. But I think it's a wise move. And he's got the right moves for this kind of thing. I think he is the right guy. for this kind of show. I mean, there are other people who could do it. I think Colbert could do it if CBS had it too. I think he'd be just fine.
Yep.
You know.
Yeah, I think you're right. I do. I think Jimmy's got that little bit of mischievousness to him that I think is extremely endearing. The Oscars was weird for me. I'll get to that in a minute here because it was very emotional. But let's talk about the actual substance of the show. The inserting of the Trump joke was
at the end
a masterstroke, in far as I'm
and it was
concerned.
a good joke. It was a strong joke. If he didn't, somebody, whether it was he or one of his writers, came up with that at the last minute. And I would not have gone out with that material unless you had some strong joke, and that was a really good one.
Absolutely, it's so simple, like so in and out. The economy of words was incredible on it. Like it was just my first words out of my mouth was, "Wow, I wonder who wrote that."
Right.
It was such a weird day, and I mean, I don't want to focus too much on this. Being it was the anniversary of Rick's passing, and at the time when I was watching the Oscars, I had a call with you and a bunch of there was a few of us, probably 6 people that I had kind of gone back and forth with a similar tone. Like, can't believe it's been a year, and just a little bit of reflection, that kind of a thing. And then as it's happening, I'm watching the Oscars with Candy, and these notes are coming back and forth. We find out that longtime director Jerry Foley passed away.
Yeah.
And all of us, we were talking about Rick, and suddenly the discussion started shifting, and we were talking about Jerry, and it was a shock that a year to the day of Rick passing, Jerry Foley passes away. Did you ever cross paths with Jerry? No, you didn't. Okay.
No. Hal Gurney was there the entire time I was there.
Yeah,
and Hal is still with us. I think you told me that he's 99 now. Yeah,
he's in his 90s. Yeah, absolutely. Just
somewhere in there.
Birthday is in his late 90s. But boy, what a shock that was, and really, really sad. And obviously we, there's been a lot of very, very beautiful tributes that have been put up, and we're putting as many of them as we see up into the Letterman Podcast Facebook group. But Jerry, I don't know if he would have been at Live at 5. Look, because Live at 5 was going when you were there, right? Across the hall?
Yeah. Was he doing that show?
Yeah, I think he was.
Well, okay.
There's a very cool. I highly recommend everybody go to the Letterman YouTube channel, and Walter and company had this amazing archived footage of Jerry that they fit into a tribute. And it tells the story of when he was at Live at 5, and how his sensibility is very much of what you guys were doing across the hall. Very, very much so. And he said he was like a kid looking at the glass, seeing the llama walking into the studio or something like that, knowing he had to do what he did, but wanting to be over there. And and that's just I love that, by the way. I don't know if you got to see a lot of that when you were there or not, but the aspect of across the hall, there's Live at 5 going on.
I remember very well. I don't remember doing a lot of material directly using them or not, but I used to remember the guests who would go on their show that I would see coming in the hallway, like, and I was corrected recently by, I think, of course, by Don Giller, that I was under the assumption that both Drew Barrymore and Henry Thomas had been on our show, because I remember both of them in the hallway, but turns out that Henry Thomas, I definitely was on our show. Drew Barrymore, I guess, had done Live at 5. So my memory had sort of conflated the two together. And that Drew Barrymore was not on the show at that point. But I very vividly remember her in the hallway. And there are also some other kind of people who came down the hallway to do that show that had not done our show, like Ginger Rogers was on that show when we were there, and Janet Gaynor I saw come in once to do that show. So that they were the shared thing, the shared area. So if you're in the hallway, you saw both things going on.
And what a device that you all could take advantage of. The fact that was happening, and it became an early legendary, in my opinion, bit of either messing around with the people at Live at 5 or somehow interfering with the show or having a whatever. Bob Bourne with the New York Islanders won the Stanley Cup. I've talked to Bob Bourne on my other podcast, and one of his favorite moments from his glory years as a New York Islander was when they were messing around the Live at 5, and Dave stole the Stanley Cup and put the Stanley Cup on his desk. And for a moment there, Bob Bourne and whoever he was with, I don't know if it was Bossy or whoever it was that he was with, they didn't know where the Stanley Cup was. They walked across the hall, and there it is on Dave's desk. And little moments like that are just
Yeah, I think most of that happened after I was there. I don't remember specifically doing many live at 5 bits, but again, I'm sure Don Giller will correct me if I'm
Yeah, he
wrong.
will. What is it? I try and emulate the succinct statement you have about Don Giller and memory. That he is
But
your
he's become
memory.
the show. Yeah, he's become all of our collective memories because most of us, have gotten old and we can't remember what we did yesterday.
Yeah.
So that remembering back that it turned. Yes, I mean he's corrected stories that I've told for 40 years that I've been telling incorrectly for 40 years and starting to get a little sick of it. But no, but I mean really, it's useful to have that. Although there's things I still can't figure out that I know happened that I have to reparse on the basis of what he said, and they must have happened in a different way, but did definitely happen.
Yeah. No, and I appreciate that about him as well. Somebody was asking me about his involvement in this show and how it is, and I said to them, I said, well, I think that he probably if I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think he probably wanted to have nothing to do with the show until the frustration of inaccuracies boiled over to the
Right.
point where he had to get involved just to correct everything. Um, we talk about Don as an archivist. We talk about, and I'm gonna leave Rick here in a second, but we're gonna show a clip. Pants, thank you very very much. We've got permission here to show part of Scheckfest, which we went to last year. That's Rick's memorial, and our friend Alex Bennett spoke there, and it's ironic to me because there were videos that were sent in, and it was such a beautiful memorial for him. It was so perfect in a movie theater, and there was
Well, not
all
just any
sorts of.
movie theater, film forum, which shows, is an archivist stream that they show all the greatest lost movies and a lot of the contemporary ones too. So that's one of the best places it could have been.
Thank you for saying that. That's exactly right. And I said to Kathy Mavrakakis and to Randy Grosick, that event was, I talk about how Candy cooks with love. That's her secret ingredient. That's her silver bullet that the other technical chef isn't going to have. Candy cooks with love. That event was produced with love, like right from the guts, love, and it was such a beautiful event. So there's footage of people giving their message to Rick, and then there's speakers, and it was back and forth, and it was a beautiful experience that was tailor made perfectly for Rick. You had David Letterman send his video in, and then you had Alex Bennett come up. So two broadcasters. And when Alex came up, one of the things that he did during Rick's memorial was he highlighted you. He highlighted you there.
Before you do this, why don't you do you want to tell the people a little bit about who Alex Bennett is and what his contributions are to the industry, so people know in case they don't?
People have heard me talk about it, and you
can
add anything that I missed. So Alex Bennett, and I'm going to say this because I know it pisses him off. Alex Bennett is a radio legend, and I love telling it because he is. Now he's a radio living legend. He's not dead. He's still around. He's still doing.
Well, like both of us, you check on a momentary basis, from time to time, see if either of us are living.
And both of you have formidable other halves. Alex is just that I got to know Rick and Alex at the same time because when Rick and our friendship was forming, I think part of the way that he sort of vetted me was he invited me on to Alex Bennett does a pop-up show every single week. Now this is a guy who he's been everywhere in radio. He did it old school, started in the Bay Area, traveled across the country, worked in Texas, worked in Florida, worked all over the place, back to the Bay Area to New York. And WMCA, I believe, developed quite the following. Started to do some impish type things, and I wouldn't go so far as to say a shock jock, but certainly Howard Stern did a lot of things out of the Alex Bennett playbook. In many ways. And when Alex was actually let go from WMCA, there was a protest the next day of a few thousand people that were outside the studio. And I mean, we're talking the earlier 80s here, before Stern and did some other stuff, Midnight Blue and all that sort of stuff, went back to the West Coast, Live 105, I believe, San Fran, and
Camel, KMA or KML, Camel Radio.
Yes. Had a studio in his studio where an audience could come in because he had so many stand-ups that would come in.
Right.
And really, again, this is a time right now. It's so hard to fathom that, because we've had, satellite radio and then podcasts where stand-ups
Mhm.
are accessible all the time. Well, it wasn't like that back then. And so
Mhm.
as stand-ups would come through the Bay Area, they would make a point to go on Alex's show, and it was a very different interaction with all these different stand-up comedians. And so you have these. So Alex, I mean, is a plethora of stories when it comes to stand-up and whatnot. And when you got him and Rick together,
Right.
Rick, who knew old Hollywood, and they're very, very close friends for 40 years.
Mhm.
Rick, who knew old Hollywood, and then also his Letterman experience, and then Alex with his experience. It was a lot of fun every single week to listen to these two go back and forth and trade these war stories from back in the day, and then also comment on current happenings of the day. So what did I miss about Alex there?
No, that's pretty good. I mean, you think of all the legends and the people he knew and all the people he spoke to. I mean, he has a picture given to him by John Lennon, on his wall. I mean, he's got, because he knew all the Beatles.
Mhm.
He knew everybody who went through who was popular, part of the popular culture at that time, and for quite a few years. I think he was friends with Robin Williams in San Francisco and with other people like that. He is what you said, a radio legend, whether he likes it or not.
Yes. Oh, I love it. Thank you. Yeah. And so, let's tell the story of the birthday present, because I don't think that was in the speech that Alex gave. And we're going to show the speech of Alex here. We'll cut it in here in a minute here, but let's do the birthday present
Well,
story.
there's this story got a little twisted in the general point of all this. He was a birthday. Alex was a birthday present to me at one point originally. I had listened to him on his show, and I don't. The last thing I do generally is call radio talk shows, because I don't have a desperate desire to hear myself speak on the radio. But he kept talking about things that I knew something about. So I used to call, and we would talk about certain old comedies or old cartoons, and he was in love with Chuck Jones's films, as am I. As I mentioned, I actually wrote my senior thesis about
Yeah.
Chuck Jones, and I actually did get to know him later on, which was an amazing experience. But he was talking about the fact that Chuck did his first cartoon with the Warner Brothers characters for about 20 years, when for CBS, called Connecticut Rapid and King Arthur's Court. And on the phone, or on the radio, Alex was saying, oh, I missed it. I messed up. I didn't record it or whatever. And then I called him and said, well, I recorded it. And if you want to come and see it, this is where you come. And then, of course, again, Lori being Lori, she got involved, and behind my back, and arranged for Alex to come on my birthday. So Alex was a birthday present to me. So suddenly, here was this guy I used to hear on radio and see on his public access talk show in a house. He was still smoking in those days, which I didn't appreciate, but I put up with it for him. And we had a really nice talk, and we showed him the show, and we became friends ever since. So at some point down the line, Alex seems to think that Rick was a birthday present to him. I don't recall that was the case, but I certainly did introduce Rick to Alex at some point, because I knew they would get along.
Yep.
And of course they became very close friends.
There we go. And then Alex refers to you
Yes.
during the memoriam. And what's that reference there? And we'll play it after this.
Well, it's what he says, which is that we kept writing jokes that required old movie footage. And I say, well, I got the guy, so I'd call him up and I say, can you want to can we use your film? We'll pay you for it. And sure, he did that. And I was doing this like a couple of times a week, every week. Yeah. And I said, at that point, Rick was heading for a career up on Wall Street. He was going to be in the, and I said to Rick, look, if I could get you a job here, would you be interested? I mean, you wouldn't have to stay here forever if you didn't want to. And, if you still want to go on to whatever, something else, but it might be something that'd be fun for you to do for a while, since you like the show and you like, this business. Yeah. He said, sure. And it took about a month. I would come into Barry Sands' office on a regular basis and explain why Rick would be a benefit, having Rick on staff would be a benefit to the show. Same thing with Liz Anderson, associate producer, going to her office. And I did this every day or two for about a month. Mm-hmm. As it was getting closer, we're trying to work on it, we're trying to see what we can do. And we're definitely interested. And finally they booked him, and they got him on the job. Rick never got to Wall Street. And as I always said, I worked on the show for about 13 months, and Rick was there for 30 years.
Oh, great. That's a hard act to follow. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Alex Bennett, and I'm here and it seems weird for me to be here because about 3 months before Shecky left us, I was talking to him on the phone, and I said, I just realized, I said, I'm 83 years old, and you're only 67, so somebody's going to have to speak at my memorial, and I hope you promise to. Well, he broke that promise to me. And I can't tell you how much I miss this guy. I want somebody to stand up here. Steve Weiner, would you stand up a second? Because this is the seed right here of my relationship with Schecky. What happened was about 45 years ago, he invited me to Schecky's birthday party because, as he put it, Schecky was a fan of mine because I had a radio show. And he would be thrilled by me being at his birthday party. And he has always referred to that moment as me being Schecky's present. And I've always thought, what a cheap gift. Anyway, from that time on, I can't remember my life without Schecky. It wasn't one of those kind of relationships, where you don't see somebody for 5 years and then all of a sudden you see them again. No, Schecky was in my life constantly for 45 years. And when I look back on that, it just amazes me that amount of time has passed and that I knew him that long. The other thing that that Steve did, and for all the Letterman people that are here, none of you would have known Rick without Steve, because what Steve did is he's the guy that lobbied to get Rick working with Late Night. So really, if you knew Rick, you knew it because of Steve. Knew of him because of Steve. It's just to sit here and to try and coalesce 45 years of what was, I consider, my most important male relationship in my life is impossible. I mean, there were every day I come up with different ideas about this speech and the kind of things that I would say and the kind of things I needed to talk about. And there are just so many of them that I can't even begin to start here. But I will tell you that what Rick did was he left me with a piece of information that really has been important to my life. Upon coming back from Antarctica, I said to him, "Did you see the penguins?" And he said, "Yes, thousands of them." And you know what the worst thing in the world is? Penguin shit. I will never look at another David Attenborough documentary in the same way again. But that was his advice to me. Years ago when George Gershwin died, his best friend, Oscar Levant, who nobody even knows who I'm talking about here, was asked what he thought. And his answer was, "Yesterday, George Gershwin died, but I don't have to believe it if I don't want to." And that's the way I feel about Schecky. He left us about 3 months ago, but, I don't have to believe it if I don't want to. So Schecky is still with me at all times. He's with me anytime that I see something on television that I want to ask him about. I go reaching for the phone, and then they say he's not there, so I look up in the air and I ask him the question. This is a man who I can't tell you the incalculable effect he had on my life and all the people around me. And what I would like to do right now is something that I think is the ultimate show business accolade. If everybody would stand up and let's applaud for Richard Scheckman, okay?
So, like, as in the case of Calvert to Forrest, I always feel if I could just had managed both of them, gone 10 or 15% for the rest of their careers,
you'd have been set.
I'd be set.
You'd been set. You would have gone down a different path, though. You would have gone down Rory's path, not not the path.
I would have just collected the paychecks and done something else. I was going to do. I mean, this is all. Both of these cases, this was not intentional. These were just cases I was bringing people in for them to appreciate, I hope.
Yeah.
In the case of Calvert, as you know, I told his story.
Yeah.
Meryl and David had seen our movie, the movie Carl and I made, and said that we were looking for something like that guy from your movie. And we said, well, that's the guy you're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's been a lot of Calvert love lately. I don't know why. Like, it's funny. There are surges of it, and I've seen a lot of Calvert stuff out there. lately, and I just appreciate that so much. And one day we are going to do that where we go through King of the Z's together. We're going to do that episode, and I can't wait to do that because it's really neat. You know what? I saw a lot of Calvert stuff when I was preparing for the Tom Snyder episode. We had Anne Marie Snyder on,
Right.
and it was really fun watching an episode of, I think it was Late Late Show. I don't think, where Calvert was a guest on Tom Snyder's show. And you think about that introduction that you made ended up getting him like all of this, like crazy.
He certainly made more money out of show business than I ever did. So you go figure. So go figure. No, I think I've told the story before, and I probably told it on one of your other shows. So I apologize if I did.
No. Tell
but
us.
I do remember. I remember the year that Calvert died, and I was watching the Emmy Awards, talking about in memoriam as we were before, and I believe it was the same year as Tom Snyder. And I remember Tom's face, and thing coming up, and here comes Calvert. And I remember turning to Lori and said, "I've had a very unusual life."
Yes.
That we took this guy, Carl and I took this guy from, who had been trying to be an actor all his life and had no success. And we made a star out of him. We collectively, we and David and Meryl, certainly. And that's weird to me, still weird to me. I still to that people really had, I mean, I had a feeling he could get, that people would like him and that it might catch on as an oddity. But boy, did it ever catch on.
What is the it factor, Steve? Like, I mean, there's so many unlikely folks that do capture some sort of, what is it? Is it a charisma? Is it a, like, what are some of the, like it's on paper, why would he? But he did, and people just absolutely loved him.
Well, I always had a theory that people liked him because they knew he was doing the best he could. You know what I mean? I mean, he was trying really, really hard, and he just couldn't quite get there. And that in and of itself was appealing. Also, he didn't seem like the kind of person you would normally see on television. If he'd had more talent as an actor, you could imagine that type of character as part of the Preston Sturges ensemble or Howard Hawks. But he was never a good enough actor to be that. He just had the right kind of personality. So I think that we found a way to use what we could, what came from Calvert naturally, and then find a way to use it. It's tricky. I mean, I don't think I could do it again per se. I mean, when we were on the Mouse Club on the Disney Channel, Mickey Mouse Club, around the third season, there had been a guy who they employed in the park next to us in the Disney MGM Studio Park, who actually was a comedian, had been a stand-up comedian for years, and he was they hired him to kibitz in the park to be a funny guy for the park, and he had a sort of spirit too. Carl and I said we got to put him on the Mouse Club, and we started putting him on regularly too. And we didn't really get the chance to build him all the way up, but I could see we're beginning to get there. But it was very different. It was a different thing too, because he did have, I mean, he was on the Ed Sullivan Show once, but he still had the kinescope and brought it to us to look at. It was sometime in the 50s, I think. And he had, what was interesting about him was he actually did have a certain amount of talent, but his talent was a totally different style than what we were doing on the show. Yeah. So when we put him into a comedy sketch, it was as if you were doing, a Saturday Night or a SCTV sketch, and suddenly Hunts Hall walked into the room. Yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's a different energy, and we thought that energy was a fun thing to put on our show on the Mickey Mouse Club. Yeah. And I think we could have built something out of him again, of this guy. But I don't think it'd be possible to do Calvert twice. It would have to be somebody with, like I said, with this guy has a different energy, different affect that would come in. If you start trying to replicate Calvert, you realize there isn't another Calvert.
No,
which absolutely. May be the greatest thing you could say about him. He was one of a kind.
Absolutely. And we're gonna move off of Rick completely at this one, unless he comes up again organically. But one of the things that I will tell you, and he's always gonna remain here somewhere, whether he's on camera or not. He's always gonna remain in the studio. If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have met. And to me, it was funny, and I've talked about this conversation. I talked about it online a little bit. I think I've talked about it on the show. We had this serious conversation before I started this show. I was fighting imposter syndrome and all that stuff. And Rick never did it for me in any way, shape, or form. He only opened a couple of little doors, and he just relied on me to walk through them entirely. But one of those things early on was he introduced me to you. And my wife and I, adore you and Lori
Well, thank you.
so,
Likewise.
so much. Like
Mhm.
you are our heart.
Thank you.
And I mean,
Thank you. We feel the same way about you and Candy.
thanks, Rick. Like, thank you. That doesn't come along every day where friendships like this develop. And if it wasn't for him, and he was one, I looked back and I've been, looking back into some of the emails. He was one of the very first people that he recommended and opened up the contact info for
Mhm.
at all. One of the very first people was you.
Right.
And I want to ask your opinion. Why do you think that is?
3:33 p.m.
Apparently, according to my phone, it's 3:30. They just announced it's 3:33 p.m. Just to let you know.
Time for my
I'm sorry.
medication.
I guess so. By the way, if when people always talk about an imposter syndrome, never neglect the possibility that you may actually be an imposter, because you never know for sure. It's just a thought. Okay, I mean, just keep it in the back of your head. It could be. It could be a possibility. Anyway, I'm not sure exactly what the question was. I mean, in terms of Rick introducing us together, it's just that I think he knew me longer. I don't know whether. I don't know. I mean, I don't have an answer to that question. I mean, I knew him for at least a decade before the Letterman show started.
Yeah.
Sure. So so whatever happened beyond that, I mean, it's a certain amount of people that he knew in his life. He had known already. A lot of the people in the film world, people who came to that memorial were people that he met on his own. People like Leonard Maltin and Richard Bannon and people like that. And that was a different circle. I didn't know that circle. I mean, I knew that circle through Rick, but there was another circle that Rick knew through me. So there were these two different circles, and Rick was sort of the nexus point. Three circles, if you consider in a sense the Letterman ensemble themselves a third circle, as opposed to something that, I mean, once I got him in there, he became part of that show way beyond my point, so that he knew all these people that I never knew. So that was the circle. Beyond that, I always said, look, I could get him in the door, but he's the one who stayed there. So he had the skill, he had the ability to do that, to do the job, and to become a great success on that show.
I think he knew we would like each other. I think he knew that.
Oh, okay. So that was the question. I hope so. I think he did. He had a pretty good ear for that kind of thing.
Yeah. And the other thing too is one thing I do know is that he felt your contributions to the show were significant. And again, we talk about the glass breaking. And didn't intend for it to become an iconic thing. Like you didn't know
one really mediocre joke that I'm known for, as opposed to the ones that were really good that nobody can remember, except for the Rabbit Dog Shaving Cream Dispenser that came back on several anniversary shows after I left the show. I didn't even know about for another 10 years.
Yeah.
That they had done that several more times. That one people vaguely remember. But other than that, that's it. Tossing the pencil.
And Calvert and
Calvert.
But again, the skeleton of the show, like that's what it's hung up on. So that's probably it too. But I do think that he thought that we would like each other, and I do very much. I want to talk about Mickey Mouse Club here, and I'm glad that you did, because I want to talk about the trip that you took. You took a trip to California.
Okay, I'm doing this for your benefit, only because you wanted to do it. Did you want to show that clip of Alex's before you move to change the subject? Because
I'm showing it. No. I'm just going to cut
What's
it
at the end?
I'm just going to I'm going to cut it in here.
Oh, okay.
I'm just going to edit it in. Yeah, I've gotten marginally a higher skill level at this thing, and so I can put pictures in, and I can put videos in, and all that sort of stuff. So stumbling forward,
now,
and so I'm going to put it in. Yeah.
I said this to you, I think off the air, so I don't think I'm repeating this for the audience. If you really, really want to honor Rick with the Letterman way, I think over time the picture behind you should change. I mean, you should have like a mustache one day, maybe glasses. You could black out, but never say anything about it. I've tipped it, but then who's going to watch the third show with me? So no one will know. So that just change it without never comment on it. Just change it bit by bit over a year or so, and then replace with a picture of Douglas Fairbanks or somebody, and see what happens. That would be the way to have.
Fairbanks would be perfect. I did that. I used to do that. And now somebody caught it. And it's not funny anymore once somebody catches it. It says in the bottom corner here, the Letterman Podcast with Mike Chisholm. I used to spell podcast wrong, and I mean for almost 100 episodes, it was spelled wrong, differently spelled wrong every single time. And an eagle-eyed viewer Andrew Azer. He messaged me one day, and he had discovered the show, and it was one of these guys that when you discover something and you just decide to go down the rabbit hole. I think we were at episode 90 something, and he watched all of them in like a 3-week period and would give me notes and would give me back, like he just rabid fan for it. And about, I don't know, 20 or 30 episodes in, he's like, "Hey, did you know that podcast is spelled wrong?" Like, all right, you caught it, you win. It's like Marvel with the no prize back in the day.
Right.
Awesome. You're
Right.
getting it. So now we've got to do something different, and maybe something is different happening. I don't know. Maybe there is something new, but
When
that
I
was a
first
really good
entered-
idea with
I've heard when I first entered my name into the Zoom the very first time, I just mistyped it, and it's been there ever since. So if anybody spots that my name is wrong, then now that's why. It was not intentional to be funny. It just was an accident.
Oh, that's so funny. I just
Like
thought
much of my career.
I thought it was you in the other half. The
No,
LS.
I
Okay, well, that's
I'd mistyped it. I think it comes up as WINDR or something because the D and the E are still pretty close together. So I just never bothered to fix it.
One of the things I love about you is how much you make me laugh. Like, and it's funny. Young does the same thing. Steve Young was on last week again, and I told a story about how he showed me, or let me listen to some of the songs, the long form songs that haven't been released yet that he's recorded, and one of them in particular had me in his apartment. I was literally doubled over laughing, and I couldn't stop laughing. You do the same thing to me, and I appreciate that. One day, the other thing too is I want to have, even if it's only one episode, I want to have a podcast with you, O'Donnell, and Young, 3 comedy writers named Steve, and it's just basically that, like that night at the diner where the 3 of you just start riffing and going off. I love how you guys
Thank you.
can do that.
I should warn you
Yes.
that my experience, you're going to have to be a really good host that day. Because my experiences with the 3 of these guys, particularly, I've seen Steve O'Donnell a lot more than I've seen Steve Young. Seen him a couple of times. All of us are like comedy people, and we tend to talk at the same time to try to get our material in. So it's going to take you real hard work to separate this and to make it coherent. Otherwise,
I don't want to make it coherent. I want that, like that.
Well, I'll tell you an Alex Bennett story then. In that case, since that came, one day when Alex was still working on his radio show here. He actually did a couple of times. He just had Rick and I come up to the studio to be on the show.
Yeah.
And when we were doing that, it wasn't like being on the radio. We just started talking the way we would talk, over lunch or something.
These are the
and we were
Sirius
definitely
years?
all.
This is at Sirius, at the Sirius studio.
No, we're talking about
before. Okay. Yep.
100 years ago, back in the 80s.
Gotcha.
So, and I remember we were probably all talking at once, which we do when we're in the same room.
Yeah.
And everything was going fine. And we started taking calls from listeners. And some woman came on and says, "I only wish you people could hear yourselves. They're talking over each other. We can't understand a thing. This is terrible." And this is unprofessional. And basically Alex told her to screw off and hung up. So it's like, that's how that worked out. So that's what happens. So you'll know.
There almost isn't an episode of this show that goes by where somebody doesn't lambaste me for us talking over each other, and I have to gently kind of just go, okay, not an interview show, conversation show, and in conversations, in my experience, those are the funnest conversations. Those are that's where the fun is.
A good talk show is a good conversation.
That's what I think.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. I mean, it's what Alex has always done. It's what others, I mean, Alex, in fact, I am in fact quoting Alex, who said that to me at one point. It's not an interview. It's a talk show is a conversation. He said that to me first. Yes. So that's very much the idea. And you do a really good job of it.
Oh, I appreciate that. Well, it's easy. Like that night. So the night before we went to the diner, this was a lot of fun. Rupert and Irene came over. And it's great because you and Rupert never cross paths, not even close. No. But yet we're there at your place, and immediately a connection is made with him and Lori from the past of how close they were in going to school and all of that. And then you guys start talking. Irene's talking to you about Chuck Jones. It was so great, and it's just that was one of those nights where we're all just talking over each other, having fun, lots of laughter. That was kind of.
Well, it was funny for me because, it was funny for me because, as you know. I hardly ever watched the show after I left.
Yes.
So, which is not atypical of people when, would spend any time on a show.
Yep.
And so I literally had never seen any of the routines. I knew he was the fixture. I knew he was a regular.
Yep.
But I have to this day never seen any of his routines from the show that as best my memory goes.
Yeah.
So I asked him what exactly he did on the show. And he started telling me about the bit that he did where Dave would tell him what to say to people. And
Yes.
I said, I admire your bravery, because I wouldn't have wanted to do that. He told me there was a time when, I guess I'm sure he's talked it over with you probably on this program, about that he almost got that a guy came after him with a knife at some point.
That was the last one. That was the very last one.
The very last one.
He hasn't told the story here, and me and Irene are trying to coordinate him to get him to tell that story here, and we'll make it happen.
To edit it out if he doesn't want it told yet, or if you don't want it out. I mean, you can edit out.
Oh, no. Are you? No,
I didn't know. I don't want to spill the beans.
No.
Take anything away from Rupert.
No. All good.
Tell you, what an amazing amount of courage it did for him to go out there. It was easy for Dave to sit in the truck and make those remarks, but to actually have to be out there and actually do this stuff and say these things, this crazy stuff David is telling him.
Oh, it was so good. It was just.
Yeah. I'm sure it was.
It was funny, and I was talking to I don't know if you know John Beckerman or not, but he writer on the show for a long time. For a brief time, the head writer wasn't a super fit at the head writer part because he's just such a creative. Do you remember the show Ed?
Yeah.
Bowling Our Lawyer.
Yeah.
Okay, so he created that show with Rob Burnett.
Oh, okay.
And John was the architect of that bit with Rupert, and it was so cool because he said they involved a guy later on by the name of Leonard. I think he was Leonard Tepper. Leonard Tepper, and so Leonard had the same deal. He had the same deal, and he's a bigger guy and bald and very kind of the same sort of a charisma that Calvert would have, I would say, just completely different. And he would have Rupert and him interact with people. And then there was this one time, he said, where they were sitting at a table somewhere. I don't know if it was outside the library or wherever, but it was outdoors in New York. And Dave just started making them have a conversation with each other. And it's literally him playing the part, and it's not them interacting or bothering people.
Right.
And he said it's the most meta thing that he's ever seen. And it was such a unique. I'll try and find that clip and send it to you, because it's a really interesting one. When you think about the mechanics of having these two characters, like playing with action figures almost in real time.
Right.
Just a lot of fun. You guys didn't do a lot of going to Mickey Mouse Club again, because I want to talk about that. I want to talk about your trip and all that stuff too. You guys didn't do a lot of public, like everything was scripted, everything was in the can with you guys, right?
Yeah, for the most part. They would sometimes send the Mouseketeers into the parks to interview kids and stuff like that. One of the first things I ever pitched, when we were asked to do a page before we got when we were being considered for the job. We would come up with a bunch of ideas, and I thought, well, anything where the kids could talk for real kids to talk for real might be fun. So I came up with the idea of something called the Donald Squawk Box, with the premise being that Donald Duck is always complaining and moaning about whatever. So if we put a beak, like a beak up, and you could sort of talk through Donald Duck's mouth, a kid could say anything they wanted to say. So they would take this thing into the park. They switched it around. I mean, they had to speak to the beak, so he was talking to the. But I always thought it was a better idea if the kid would literally come up to Donald Duck's mouth and speak through his mouth to be able to say what bothered him. Doesn't matter, the bit worked. So they did things like that, and they certainly did stuff where they would take, they would have real kids, go out with real kids and do something or another, or go to talk to real kids. But it wasn't like a staple. It wasn't a major part of the show.
Right. Do you enjoy the searching for the found comedy, or do you prefer the art of writing an awesome piece and then seeing it translated through somebody who performs it?
Well, personally, I don't have the kind of courage that Dave would have and people like that have to go out and do this stuff. So if we come, my feeling is I like anything that works, anything that we think of. That it's really Meryl's setup, her starting, but Carl and I, were sort of responsible for Alan Alda Man and his Chinese food, because Meryl had asked us to ask everybody to look in your neighborhood and see if you can find celebrity photos in restaurants. And we came in after a weekend, and I said, or I don't know which of us said it first, but one of us said, "Oh, on the inside, I found a Chinese restaurant with pictures of Alan Alda in the window," and then Carl or whoever spoke second said, Carl would have said, "Well, on the west side, I saw a picture of Alan Alda, a Chinese restaurant with pictures of Alan Alda in the window." So Meryl came in and said, we told her the thing. And Meryl literally said, so the bit would be Alan Alda man and his Chinese food. That's how quickly she thought. And so that was great. But once the idea was out there, it was all in David Merrill's hands. So we had nothing to do with it anymore. And that's great. I mean, I love doing that. Anything that works. It really just depends on what comes into your head at that moment. This, any show that works 5 days a week or any show, it's a machine. It just chews stuff out continuously. So you don't think of what kind of thing you want to do. You just think of things to do and hope that they'll work. And somebody will be interested in doing them.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. No, we pitched ideas for street pieces that they didn't want either, that I still think had potential. But, it's like, but that's like the same thing when, not every joke is picked. You turn in the Letterman days, everybody would turn in like 10 jokes to page, which they might use too.
Yeah.
So that's how that show worked. The Disney show worked a little differently because we were doing full sketches. Therefore, once Alan had passed a sketch, we knew that some version of it was going to go on the air, and that would be ours.
How many? That's a great question, actually. I don't care that we bounce around. It's fine that we bounce around.
That's okay.
SNL obviously is in the news because SNL 50 is coming up, and you talk about that. SNL, for people who've gone down that rabbit hole, understand that the dress rehearsal. You've got all these sketches, and some of them make it to dress with the intention that they're not going to make the show, right, and make that work. I'm curious because I know that one of the guiding lights or the principles of your tenure on Mickey Mouse was that it's going to be SNL for kids, kind of a thing. That was kind of that's what they asked us they wanted. Yeah, we said amongst ourselves that we wanted to try to be SCTV for kids. We had a higher thing. And it did us injuries in terms of getting material out. But even though we supported this because, it hasn't really changed much over 50 years. I mean, SNL relies to a certain extent on what are known the trade as refillables, which means taking a basic sketch and redoing it with replugging certain elements, but basically doing the sketch over and over again. And audiences like that. I'm not saying that's necessarily a wrong thing. Personally, it's not my favorite thing because it always feels a little lazy to me. And Alan the head writer on the Mouse Club, felt the same way. So we would use the SNL approach whereby we could create ongoing characters, but we had to do a fresh context for them. The way they did. Okay. So, but that's harder. So, that's hard. And, there are plenty of times where we'd sit there and say, what have we got? Why did we fight against redoing sketches? But, because we have to come up with more material. So I like that better. And one of the reasons, and I'm sure, look, I'm not going to comment on current SNL because I don't watch it. Right,
and haven't for a long time.
Right.
I stopped watching it in part because I just got tired. There's a certain point whereby what I used to call Pavlov's school of comedy kicks in, which is that a sketch could go on that show once and not necessarily get a lot of big laughs, but they would repeat it over and over again. And an audience will, when they recognize something, they will laugh because of the familiarity.
Sure, of course.
And I'm not saying, again, I don't want to feel like I'm sitting here, I'm like not bad-mouthing SNL. They've been on 50 years for a reason.
No, you're not.
But
it's a style we're deconstructing and we're analyzing is what we're doing.
It's a style that gets tiring for me as a viewer.
Yes.
Because when I've seen a sketch, then I basically, I don't want to see it again. I'd like to see something new. So I remember.
Just to make that point before you move to the next point, like I think when Wayne says "schwing" and everybody laughs, it's the same mechanism as when Fonzie walked into the scene for the first time before he did anything and the audience erupted, or Kramer does his entrance and then everybody erupts into applause. To me, those two things are the same thing. It has nothing to do with Schwing being funny.
Well, it also, those are to really split hairs even more finely than we were doing.
Yeah.
Those technically are really what I would call catchphrases.
Yes.
And catchphrases have a long history in comedy.
Yes.
Catchphrases aren't necessarily in and of themselves evil, although, shows like, and again, here, I'm not criticizing these great shows, but Norman Lear's shows used to use them like crazy.
Absolutely.
And every time Jimmy Walker said dynamite,
Yep.
But that didn't necessarily mean that the rest of the show wouldn't be fresh.
Yep.
but there's a rhythm in certain SNL sketches whereby, yes, the catchphrases are there, but you basically know what the structure of the sketch is if you've seen it before.
Yep.
So it's more than just the catchphrase. Okay, you know what's going to happen, basically.
Yes.
And I mean, I remember exactly when I decided to stop watching, and I'm probably setting myself up for people to say horrible things about me. You have no taste, and maybe you're right. And I'm not criticizing the performers, but I remember the first episode of the year that, and it was a good cast: Phil Hartman, Dana Carvey, all these really talented people. But I remember the first church lady sketch.
Okay.
Now, somebody have to research this for me.
Yep.
But I don't remember it getting a huge amount of laughs that first night. Maybe it did. Maybe I'm wrong, but this is my memory. But I remember literally sitting there and thinking, if I keep watching the show, I'm going to have to see the church lady every week for the next 5 years. And I just didn't want to anymore. And I basically said, I'm done. And
part of that, though, is your instinct that, oh God, this is going to catch on. Like part of it too is noticing the character that Carvey created. And
it's
saying,
a fine character. It's a great character.
That's what I'm saying.
Like, if you watch SCTV,
yeah,
if Edith Prickley would be on, or who was the head of the station that name was head of the station. It's so long ago now.
Yeah,
Joe Flaherty played, but all these characters, they would be in a different context when you would see them again. It would create its own universe where they could interlate, even though they were basically doing a sketch show. Yeah. They could continue it. Johnny LaRue had this running thing about the crane shot that he wanted, but they would build it in different ways so that they finally paid it off by giving him his big crane shot. That kind of stuff I adore. So it's not characters I don't like. Okay, it's not creative. And again, the people on SCTV are wonderful. I don't find out about them till they leave the show usually.
Yes.
And suddenly I'll discover
them,
right?
Yeah.
Right. And I'll say, oh, and that's always been their greatest strength, that they find the best possible people, and they become huge stars, and they're deservingly so. They have the cull the best people for this sketch, that kind of comedy in the world. Yep. So again, I am not for a moment downplaying Saturday Night Live, except as something I want to watch. You only have so many hours in your life, and I stopped it at some point. And for me, that was the right choice.
Yeah. I appreciate how respectful you are. You're extremely respectful, and
Yeah, but also because I've heard Lorne Michaels can get people killed, so I've heard that. I don't know that it's true. I've heard the rumor. I just want to make you have to be very careful in life, okay? Particularly these days.
You got to watch out for these Canadians.
Yes, well, they are tough.
It's going to be 50 years for that show, and it seems to be that. We had Bill Carter on the show here a couple of weeks back, and we talked about that. And by the way, I don't know, have you seen Late Nighter yet? I don't know if you.
No, you told me about it, but I haven't had a chance to look at it.
Oh yeah, we talked about it on the phone. That's right.
Yeah, we talked on the phone.
Crazy, love it. And it's interesting, but Carter. I'll get to Late Nighter in a second, I guess. But Carter talked about how Lauren's hellbent to get to 50, and then after 50, we're not sure what's going to happen.
Right
after that with the show. It's going to be very interesting to see if that institution, I mean, I'm certain it's going to, the curiosity factor for the first couple of years for sure. It's going to be very interesting to see if that show can continue without Lauren.
Yeah, I admit I will be very curious, and I might try tuning it in depending on how it goes, because a young person, younger producer, showrunner, might have entirely new ideas, and I think any show. A show that goes on the air for 3 years can use new ideas, much less one that's on the air for 50 years. And I think the possibility of maybe reinventing that show is, well, maybe they don't want to reinvent the wheel, but maybe you do, or maybe at least want to take some changes and redecorate the wheel, and put it in a different way. And I think that would be really, really interesting.
Yeah,
I would like to see where it goes from there.
Me too.
I would like to see a young person take good charge of it and see what happens.
There's rumors, all sorts of rumors about one of the more prevalent ones is Seth Meyers. Is that Seth Meyers will step back?
That's interesting.
And it is, but it's funny because it's almost like he does two jobs, because Lauren not just is the showrunner of this show, and I mean, I'm watching a couple of weeks ago, and the way they do it now is especially they'll do the longer commercial break, but in the longer commercial break they'll come back for a second and do a little bumper of showing what's going on the stage. As they're setting up props and all that sort of stuff, and the actors are getting cued, and you might even hear the director, okay, yeah, hit your marks now or whatever, and then it goes to a couple more commercials, and they come back and here's the sketch. And they did one of those, and there's Lauren standing there in the midst of all the chaos. There he is, like he is the showrunner, like you said.
Right.
But he's also kind of the czar of late night on NBC now. The Tonight
He's
Show,
certainly, yep.
and Seth. Like there's that part of him too. How in the world do you deconstruct that? I'm certain NBC is pretty excited, just the way that when Carson retired, they were kind of excited to get their Tonight Show back, to get their franchise back, ownership and all that kind of stuff.
But were they? That was a tough one. I mean, that's a good question, because obviously they fumbled that one, or at least my people, except that then they didn't, because then Jay Leno turned out to be the right choice in terms of the financial and popularity. But a lot of people thought they fumbled it, and they certainly were. There was certainly a great deal of chaos, and you would think they'd had all these years. They knew Carson was going to go. You would think they would have been better position not to have that kind of chaos. So I don't know. I wonder what's going on back there, as Lorne Michaels' 50th year comes up, and whether he's made noises about leaving. I don't think he said definitely that he's going to leave. Maybe you've heard more than I have.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. It'll be interesting. But my guess is, I don't know whether he'll try to keep the company together, or will Jimmy Fallon say, "Oh, then I want to produce. I want this to be my show from here on in." He might want to take over the way Carson did at some point, and the way that Dave did after. When I was at Letterman, it was Carson NBC Productions. Sorry, because it was something else, Carson NBC Productions, and then Dave wanted to run it as well. He should have, and I wonder if Jimmy Fallon will do the same.
Yeah, it's going to be really that's the part and that's the part where NBC, regardless of if they put the right host in and all of that stuff, the thing about NBC at that point is they got their franchise back. Whereas it became Carson's. Carson had so much power and so much leverage. The fact that they got it back, and to a certain degree, you would think the Tonight Show and late night and SNL might be something similar. I don't imagine Broadway Video would be the the producer of all these shows moving forward, but maybe that's what they're trying to structure. Maybe there is some sort of succession of the way things are.
There may well be. And Lorne Michaels may have an entire plan sketched out of what he wants to do.
Yeah.
Literally have no idea. I mean, it's I think it'll be really, really interesting. And I just know that Bill Carter's already getting ready to write the book.
I hope so. I said that to him when he was on. I said, "When's the third book coming?" And he wisely said, I need to have something that is compelled, where it's in your face. This is what we have to write about.
And this will be it.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so.
Because it has to be a change.
Late night is all interconnected now in so many different ways.
Right.
Jon Stewart's manager is the same manager as Kimmel, which is the same manager as Colbert. Lorne Michaels, all of these things are interconnected now. His first book was, of course, with Carson, Leno, Letterman. The second book, it hits you in the face. Oh my God, this brouhaha that has happened with Conan O'Brien and Leno and all of that, all of the players involved. I mean, that's when he said the third book will come. The third book will come when there's an event like that hits you in the face, and it's like you have to have it. But we have seen something pop up here. Late Nighter, latenightr.com. And I endorse it as a fan. I'm just throwing it out there, endorsing it. If something beyond fandom shows up moving forward, that'd be great too. But as a fan, every day now we get a newsletter in your email, or you can go to the site latenightr.com, and there's the happenings of late night, and it's all organized in one place, and it's super cool. One of the things that Carter said, and I'm super curious about your perspective on this, when it comes to television, obviously there's a dilution. The streaming services have changed things. Everything has changed. Cinema is completely different now because of streaming and the way distribution works and all of that. But one of the things that keeps television kind of how you and I remember it for this next generation is the appointment events that happen on television. Sports is a big one, of course. And then, the other one, which, I think it was the NFL, the AFC Championship, whatever, was the biggest it had ever been, 50 million viewers or whatever. And then every day, late night. And the different late night hosts and what they say and the different stars that are on, the happenings, the water cooler moments that might happen from it.
Let me ask you a question, because you probably may even understand this better than I do at this point.
Yeah.
I'm under the impression right now, the fair amount of what of the late night traffic is not people watching it at the times they're on, but by watching bits and pieces of it on YouTube the next day, or some other thing. And if that's the case, that's not appointment TV either.
Well, see, the thing is that this is where it's the line is blurred, because very much all of these shows, I would say James Corden, recently left, and Taylor Thompson came on and is doing something different there. But the thing that Corden did was he got really good, and all the shows try and do it. They come up with these viral moments. They try and come up with these moments that are replayable on YouTube, and that's the water cooler thing. It's not even so much the next day talking about it at the water cooler. It's sending videos to each other. Oh my God, did you see the sketch they did, or this moment on one of the shows? But that's
a different kind of thing.
That's
a different kind of thing than everybody sees the Super Bowl at the same time if they're watching the Super Bowl. Okay, that collective communal experience, which used to be a huge part of television, is basically restricted to sports, because nothing else has that kind of clout. The award shows used to, but the audience for award shows have really shrunk. So there's nothing, we don't get that kind of excitement over award show anymore that you used to get. Again, this is one of those ancient history stories. There used to be 3 networks and a couple of local stations, and you were going to watch what was there. So the mass audience didn't have 1,000 choices plus what they could get on social media for their consumption. It's a whole different world now. So and I don't think that's ever coming back. The water cooler moment as such is coming back.
Well, and where late night is kind of, the late night shows are kind of a hybrid of this is yes, they have these prepared things or whatever that may go viral, whatnot, but it seems to be, and I mean, shout out to Johnny Carson on this one here. It seems to be the monologues that seem to be the appointment part of this television experience still, that many people, they want to know, and I think that's where late nighter sees their avenue. Carter is an editor at large there, and I love that Bill Carter has a place consistently where we get to see or hear either him directly or his influence when it comes to late night. I don't know if there's anybody who is a more foremost expert on it than Bill. He certainly seems to be the guy that it's so great that we can see that. The Late Shift just celebrated the 30-year anniversary, for goodness sakes. And the monologue. So you get this newsletter the next morning, and it's like, here's what was said on Kimmel's monologue. Here's what was said on Colbert's monologue. Any big moments that happen. And that's kind of what you're talking about. It's the next day review of it rather than people staying up and watching it all and trying to see it, but it's all summed up. And so I find it to be a very fascinating premise. And as a fan of late night, I'm so excited about it. And I hope
is there any sort of sense this early of how well it's doing? Is there a lot of people looking at it, or is it becoming a thing? Do you know?
I know their viewership is bigger than the viewership of this show already. Which
what isn't really, Michael? I mean, it's
exactly. No, they've got a very robust. They've had a very robust start, and it's funny you talk about that. I got to watch out a little bit. We put up a Facebook post about Jerry's passing, and it went late nighter shared it, and it's like, okay, all right, I don't know if we put it up too fast or whatever it was, but I find it fascinating that there is something where a conversation like this could get reported somewhere, which I wasn't really used to before. But I'm very, very excited that this venue is there for those of us that love late night. So anyway, I highly recommend you check it out.
I will.
It's super, super cool. I want to talk about your trip. You got a chance to reunite. And have you shot the podcast already? Have you already done the?
I just did the other one. I did, a couple of days.
How'd it go?
So, but it's interesting because he wasn't the interviewer, and I'm going to go battle as a maybe Lori will bring the name into me because I want to give him a plug. I will post it on my social media for my tens of friends. So
and we'll post it for our handful as well.
Because it was more general kind of podcast, and he was asking some interesting basic questions like what would a day be like? What would you write, and how would you hand it in? How would it be decided, and things like that. So it was interesting. I think it covered some different kinds of material, and also fit a lot more in because he was interested in talking about the Mouse Club, which we've just gone into that on any of your shows a little bit because he's friendly with Jennifer McGill, one of our Mouseketeers, who Lori and I saw with him a couple of weeks ago. I hadn't seen her for a while. She hadn't been in New York for a while. So yeah, no, I think it went okay. But we I don't know. Are you talking about the trip to California? Is that what you're?
Well, we're going to get to that too, but
okay.
but because that podcast was spawned from the trip to California, wasn't it?
No, he's been doing this for some time.
So I meant you guys talked about it.
Oh
when
yeah,
you were
yeah.
in Cali,
Not because of no, it wasn't the California trip because
Okay,
we did. This was about 2 weeks ago. Jennifer was in town to play. She was at Lincoln Center actually appearing in Stephen Schwartz's, and I forgot the name of the show. Laura, do you remember it? She's going to write it down for me. But she appeared at Lincoln Center. Apparently knocked Stephen Schwartz and the audience over with her performance, which does not surprise me at all. She's great talent. And we were going to rendezvous have lunch at the Metropolitan Museum. They have a nice dining room, dining area there. And she brought Burke, I believe was his first name, brought Burke along. I'm getting this now. Burke Allen, and his podcast he's a publicist, and his show is called Big Time Talker. He's been doing it for some time. But we talked, all four of us with Lori, we all talked for some time there. And at the end of it, Burke said, I'd like to do my podcast, and I'll go anywhere, I'm a cheap date, so I'm happy to do it. I think it was a little bit different. I wasn't sure how I was going to go either. But the fact that Burke doesn't know as much about this as say you do coming in, made for a different set of questions, and I hope people will find those interesting too, because they were actually very procedural questions you don't always think about if you don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And how is this the writing on the Letterman show different from the writing on the Mouse Club? How is it different from something else that you did? And all those things. So, and every one was completely different. Except that both of them were office jobs, but other than that, they were handled a completely different way.
Yeah.
So there is that difference.
The Mouse Club, and I'm so grateful that you had that experience, and I love listening to you talk about it. I mean, again, I think that there's so many behind the scenes stories and whatnot about that show and the history of it. There's a rich history there. I said to you, I think someone needs to, I think it would be cool if someone did a podcast, whether it was a limited run or whatever.
I said it too. I mean, some of them have. Jennifer's doing a podcast, and several of the other Mouseketeers have done podcasts. I would like to see somebody like you, the equivalent of a real serious fan of that show, and they're all in their 40s now. Yep. And and I would like to see them do that, because the interviewer, who is an outside perspective, asks sometimes a different set of kind of questions than somebody who's on the inside would. Yeah. And I really would like to see somebody do that. Look, I'm not going to take up a lot of your Letterman era time.
No, take it up.
But I will say that what I have not expected, and none of us expected when we did the show, was that this would have that show would have the kind of impact for the people who watched it that the Letterman show had for the people who watched it. Yes. See what I'm saying? None of us expected that. I'm not saying just me, none of us did. We all came back. I mean, I won't go into great details, but when we came back from the show, I remember my agent saying, don't even put on your resume because it won't do you any good. And some years after that, I talked to one of the Mouseketeers who said to me, my agent told me the same thing. And over the course of the years, I found out that all of their agents told them the same thing, every one of them. And the thing is, now this show is being talked about by the people who remember it in kind of the same terms that the Letterman show is being talked about, something that was hugely important to them. Yeah. They remember, I thought if people remembered, well, when you're a kid, you remember the kid you had, the Mouseketeer you had a crush on, or this side, that. Sure. I figured that might happen. But they remember the comedy better than we do. Like the way you remember things from the Letterman show sometimes better than we do. They remember the comedy you did on the show. We were trying to do the best comedy we could. We never tried to write down anybody. We just tried to write stuff that was funny, period. Not funny for kids, but just funny, period. Yep. But that was for us, because we would be bored if we were, any other way. But the fact that it did seem to register that there were people who got it and really understood that what we were doing. I didn't really realize until like a year and a half ago. I didn't get the sense of the extent of this. I think I don't know if I told you this story. I may have in private. I'll try to tell it fast.
You don't have to tell it fast, man. Just be you, my friend.
Okay. About a year and a half ago, a little bit, it was around December. Yeah. A Mouseketeer that I've had, that we all had a long relationship with, named Lindsay Alley, who actually helped write I worked on a one-woman show with her when she first got to New York and when she was in her 20s, that we did at the Laurie Beachman Theater on 42nd Street. She came back to New York to do a show, her current show, which she's done on her own, which is a wonderful show, in a nightclub here. And we went to see her. Laurie and I went to see her. And Bob Stein, who was Robert Klein's music director, who did the songs for Lindsay's show, he was there. And Ben Rimmelauer, who directed the show, who was actually running this nightclub and booked her in the first place. We were all of us who were involved in the creation of that show, Lindsay's show, were there. And at the end of the show, and it was a great show, Lindsay was fantastic, as she always is. At the end of the show, Lindsay sort of introduced us from the stage and then did a song, one of the songs that Bob had written for our show, one of the original songs he'd written. And that was that. So bear in mind, it also was dark in that room. I don't think when she introduced anybody could pick us out of the crowd, but she introduced us. So we went back. We got to saw her for a minute before, but we want to talk a little bit longer. So they'd given her a little room with a bar where she could greet people. So, people were coming one after the other to talk to Lindsay, and we were waiting for that to all be over so we could talk to her a little more length.
Yeah.
So I was sitting down, and Hillary Rollins, who worked on the Mouse Club with me, who had also been there that night. She was there.
Whose daughter is she, by the way?
Jack Rollins, executive
daughter.
producer of Late Night with David Letterman and every other great comedy you've seen in the last 50 years or so.
One of the greatest Hollywood managers in history.
Sorry, the last 70 years or so. Anything you loved until maybe the last 15 years. Everything before that you really loved in comedy that was really hip. If it wasn't Lorne Michaels, I promise you, it was Jack. And in any case, Hillary was there, and so we're sitting there talking, and I think Hillary had gone out for a minute, so I'm sitting there, and Laurie's sitting in a little banquette, waiting for Lindsay to be through, and this 40-ish woman comes up to me and says, "Are you Steve Weiner?" And I said, "Yeah." Like, I was a little afraid. It's like, what is this about? And she says, and she starts talking about the Mickey Mouse Club and all this, right? She knows everything about, and suddenly, and Laurie is the one who counted them. I didn't count them. 11 people are surrounding me. Okay, who had come to see Lindsay's show, and they're all talking. They're all like asking a million questions, and they're so excited. Now Laurie, so immediately she invites them all to brunch, and it just goes with the territory, right?
The gift of hospitality. Your wife wrote the book.
Yes. So, and we couldn't even do it in one. We didn't have room for them in 1 week, so we had to do it over 2 separate Sundays. But they've become really, really good friends of ours now. And and a lot of them became, one of our friends from that group now, a really good friend, Patty Chung Adams, became an Imagineer for Disney, in part because we love the show. And when we were out in California just a month or so ago, she got us onto the Disney studio lots, which I'd always dreamed of going because I was a Disney kid. And to actually be on the studio lot where she now works was very exciting. And we also met up in the Disneyland when we went out to Disneyland while we were there. We met there, and she brought another Mouse Club fan to meet us. So we're become friends, and I don't want to single her out particularly, but they're just off the top of my head. All of these people, and as we we were all saying to each other, and Hillary came in, we got involved after, and they seem normal.
Yep.
I will point out that these are not New Yorkers.
No.
These people came in from all over the country to see Lindsay perform in this tiny little nightclub on 42nd Street because they loved her so much. Okay. Laurie and I were sitting at home, and it was sort of raining, and saying, well, I guess we have to go. It's Lindsay, so it's raining. Yeah, we'll go. What the hell? It's like these people flew all over the country and they know each other because they turned up at all the same events. Okay. Yep. They go to the Mouseketeer events. And Disney didn't know, and I don't think to this day knows how big this show was. I don't think they got it at all. Yeah. But a number of them went into various careers in part because they loved the show so much. This none of us were expecting. Yeah. It really, this is a huge surprise to the Mouseketeers, a surprise to the production staff, to all of the people I've spoken to. It's kind of amazing. I sort of thought there was a chance it would happen with Letterman. Yes. Because I knew it was a hip show. Absolutely. And I knew if it was successful. Yeah. And we tried to make the Mickey Mouse Club a hip version of the Mickey Mouse Club. That was what they told us they wanted. They didn't know what that meant. We had to figure that out ourselves. But we had a great group, and we figured it out. And I thought we had delivered that, but I didn't necessarily think that people would pick up on that element of it, or that it would have any kind of life after that. The original show, yeah, that's been proven over the time. But this show, there was one in the 70s which ran about 12 weeks or something. And the only thing they remember is that from that show is that Lisa Welchel was on that before The Facts of Life. But otherwise, other than that, nobody really remembers that show. And we could have gone down that hole ourselves. I'm not blaming the people who did that show. I'm sure they did the best they can. They could, but there was no reason to suspect that, we were doing a very different kind of show than the original show.
Yes.
And that could have gone either way. There could have been people who also said, well, where are the years? Where's the stuff we loved about the old show? Because there was versions of it, but it'd been changed in a way. And we still had the serials. We still had we still had theme days. Sometimes there were different themes than the original themes, but we picked up on a lot of that stuff.
Yep.
But we turned it upside down and tried to find, and we would sometimes do sketches that parodied what we were doing on the show, the way we would do on Letterman, to parody being on a talk show.
Yep.
We would parody we'd take elements of our own show that were straight and do parodies of them on the same show. Okay. We would do parody, and I'll give you an example of one.
Yep.
Okay. We had a thing. I mean, there were all these different elements. It wasn't just the writers. We had an incredible music department. We had people. We had little individual things that were, remote pieces that were not fun, not like Dave Funny, but they would send people out. Kids talk to kids in the park and things like that. And there were all these different elements. Well, there was a weekly thing called I Want to Spend a Day With. Mm-hmm. And they would find a celebrity, and then some kid would write. If the kid would write in, then say, "I'd like to spend a day with X and Y celebrity," and they would try to match that celebrity up with the kid from home, and then they would follow them around with a camera for a day. So it would be a regular kid from a fan of the show, mm-hmm. and they would meet this famous person, and they would do these things. Well, Carl and I thought we got to parody this. We just have to. Because it's fruit, and bless our great head writer Alan Silverberg, who was, by the way, as much a part of why the Mouse Club was a success as Merrill was a part of why the Letterman Show was a success. Alan is a bold statement. Yep. It's Alan Silverberg is fantastic. Is fantastic. Yep. And Alan loved it when we came up with these kinds of things. So we decided we wanted to do that. Now, we had one running gag that Carl and I had come up with. That's sort of kind of the thing we would kind of do in Letterman. We'd done a sketch in one of the props for the jokes in the sketch was a life-size cutout of Alex Trebek. That was just a payoff in one of the jokes. Yep. That there was this life-size cutout of Alex Trebek, and we said to Alan, we just would sort of like the picture of Rick Scheckman and your thing. We'd sort of like that thing to be on the set every now and then with no explanation. In other sketches, you didn't have to be, and no one ever refers to it. And then we said, oh, that's it. That's it. We want to have, I want to spend a day with the Alex Trebek cutout. Some kid has, allegedly written in to say they've seen it on the show. Yep. And all they want to do is meet the Alex Trebek cutout in real life. That's all.
Let's go on rides. Let's go water skiing. Let's go do
Well, do what it is. Right. Now, to backtrack a little. Well, so we sold that to Alan. He said, great. And then they said, well, please we need to put him more often. So we started putting him in more backgrounds. He was turning up everywhere. He'd see his face in a window behind in some scene or something. It would just be there all the time.
I love Easter eggs so much. Yep.
So there had been one, okay, wait for it. They had been very often on the show. The idea was that the kid wrote in, they'd meet themselves. Well, that doesn't always work. You have to find who's available. So from time to time, they would get somebody who became available. Mm-hmm. Then they would find some kid, a real life kid who would be willing to spend a day with this person. Mm-hmm. They got Donald Trump booked. Okay.
Oh, there you go.
And we were a very political group.
Yeah.
And we hated the idea. A lot of us did, not all of us. To be fair, there were people who were fine with it. Yep. But a lot of us really, really hated the idea of that we were going to be promoting Donald Trump on the Mickey Mouse Club.
And this is before.
This is 1982.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
This not 82. I'm sorry. This was 80. This was 1990. Sorry, 92. I was doing Letterman. No. 90, 91, something like that. I think it was 90. Yeah. Okay. This was just
before The Apprentice. Even it's before he's just a mogul and a
horrible human. And it has anybody who grew up in New York City, who lived in New York City during the 80s and the 70s, 80s, and 90s knew how horrible Donald Trump was as a human being, as a businessman, as everything else. It was not a surprise.
Yep.
So we had one of our the assistant to one of the executives on the show. I won't use her name, not because I think she'd be ashamed of this, because I know she's still very political, but she's a wonderful person. But since I haven't cleared it with her, I won't mention it. She actually got a petition started to try to get him off the show, and it was signed by a lot of people.
Wow.
Well, Disney didn't care, and so this went on the air. Now, I was trying to, and I like to work when I do parody. I think it's a lot of fun to work off a very specific script.
Yep.
You know, I mean, when the guys that Airplane did it, they based it on the movie 0 Hour. If you go see 0 Hour now,
yep,
you'll see all the setups for the jokes. That's all there. You know, and they use that, and then they come up with their own jokes too. They were independent, but they're very often, it's one of those things where somebody will do something in the sketch, and you sit in the room, and the payoff to that is this, right? So I grabbed this and brought it into the room and used it as a template. Very few people would recognize it. But if you saw the back-to-back, the I want to spend a day with Donald Trump, and then I want to spend a day with the Ox Trebek cutout, I mean, there's voiceover in the original, which the kid says, and the script, by the way, the scripts were written for the kids, even the real kids. They might be interviewed, but they had to do it, you know, along with this. So, you know, the kid said, when I first found out I was going to be spending the day with Donald Trump, I got so excited I could hardly sleep. And so I changed it into, when I first found out I was going to spend the day with the Ox Trebek cutout, I got so excited. My mother made me lay down with a cool towel over my head. I mean, I don't know if anybody still does that, but parents used to do that.
Oh,
and
yeah.
it was that kind of joke. But a lot of it was like based off the Donald Trump thing. And so we did that, you know, off the show. So we would do things like that. We would parody. I mean, I don't even remember how this started anymore, but we were what the start of this was. But basically, the thing is, that was the kind of comedy we would do. That we called it the Rocky and Bullwinkle parts of the show. In essence, it was trying to find that same thing, whereby if you watch Rocky and Bullwinkle and you're already a hip kid, you'll get a lot of more jokes than other people would do. If you watch at the time, there were jokes that the kids wouldn't get, that they did on that show. They had no compunction about it. I remember my father explained some jokes to me. There was an episode where you remember What's the Matter You and the big, you know, the big football things on Rocky Bullwinkle. If you didn't,
oh yeah, of course, yeah.
There's a scene where there's a sequence where they all have to pretend to be women. They're all dressed like it's going to be a women's football team.
Yeah.
And Boris Badenoff is the football player, and he's got an all women's team. And he says, I can't do a good impression, but I will be the Phil Spitalny of the gridiron. Now, in 1960, whatever it was, I didn't know who Phil Spitalny was. My father said, "Oh, Phil Spitalny had an all-girls jazz band in the 40s."
Yeah.
So, you know, they didn't care about that, putting that kind of stuff on the air.
No.
But we couldn't go that big on. We couldn't go that hard to please on our show. But we got around. You know, we tried to do those kinds of things. In any case, I guess the whole point of this,
by the way,
really,
is a Disney sensibility. Disney does that in all of their biggest tentpole movies. They try and have layered humor in there. So I think that's
they do it now. I'm not sure they were doing it. I'm not saying that we instigated it, but there wasn't that much of it when we were there.
Oh,
so like I said, they told us when they were interviewing us, look, the reason they wanted Carl and me is because of the Letterman credit. They made no bones about it.
Yep.
You know, they just said that's, you know, we want this to be a hip version of the show, and that's why we want you guys.
Yep.
You know, and you know, as I've said before, it was the easiest job interview I ever went to, because neither Carl nor I really wanted this job. So we were very relaxed. So when you're relaxed, you know, you don't screw up the job interview, and we were fine. So then we got the job that we didn't want, and we were sort of stuck with it. Yep. We turned out to be a great job, but we didn't know that at the time. And we didn't even know when we all started there. It says, well, they think they want hip. Do they know what that actually means?
Yeah.
And so we did do, you know, there were times I think we had to sort of educate them in a way to a certain degree. I mean, not that they were idiots, but I mean, we had to find out what that was and put it on the air. And they had to let it go. They had to give us enough rope to let us try. And to their credit, they did. Certainly in the early days, give us a fair amount of rope, more than I think we were expecting. Mm-hmm. And I think after a certain point, the show became a hit. And then we sort of had a certain amount of leeway still and then this is all part of the history, but that all changed in the fourth season. But it's way too much to go into here. If you ever want to do a podcast just about this show, which will really drive people away, that would be where to go with that.
I think it's very clear that I don't care about driving people away. You know, I care.
You
about
wouldn't
the
have booked me again if
conversation.
you wouldn't have booked me for a third time if you were. So
here's my thought, because we've talked
Yeah.
about this a lot in private as we just shoot the shit and all that. Here's my thought. Disney Plus has made fantastic 3-part, 4-part, 5-part documentaries on things within the Disney mythos. You know, now that they own Industrial Light and Magic, they did a phenomenal Light and Magic documentary that went through the early years of ILM and had a frightening amount of footage. I could not believe how much footage they had for that. They did the same thing with the Imagineers and the history of Disney rides and things like that. I was trying, between all of our conversations about this, trying to think, and it was always, oh yeah, that'd be great if they did a podcast, if they did some sort of an ongoing show or whatever that told these stories. I think they're fascinating. I think you're right. I think there is a market for it, whatnot. But now I came up with the idea of one of these on Disney Plus. Imagine if there was a 5-part on the history of the Mickey Mouse Club. And I mean, like to me, you've got the biggest stars in the world as a hook, right? And the depth of stories, like what you're talking about as you know, the steak and the sizzle, right? The big stars, of course, you know, the Timberlakes and the Britney Spears and all those of the world as the sizzle. But what you just told me is the steak. And I really think that would be I think a lot of people would watch it.
Well,
I think it's worth doing for sure to preserve that history.
There's not much I can't really say anything about that, because there was something I heard about that may or may not be happening, and none of which I'm allowed to talk about.
Okay, all right.
So I don't know, but yes, I agree that'd be a wonderful thing if it happened. There's one other thing which would be wonderful, which the fans have been demanding from Disney Plus and writing in, which to run the shows again.
Put the shows
Just
on the
run the
damn
shows
network.
again.
They got a
Script the network.
friggin' streaming
Now,
service.
Yes, there is a hideous problem with that, which we knew in 1989, 92. Everybody knew on the show, which is that they wanted all the contemporary pop songs that were, you know, again, the music on the show was fantastic. Our kids were fantastic singers and dancers. So I don't want to say it's just about comedy. It was about everything on that show.
Absolutely. It's a
but
total
they
variety
wanted
show.
that.
Yeah.
They wanted, you know, they had pop bands on. They had New Kids on the Block. They had all these guys, you know. They have a good Milli Vanilli story if at some point if you're interested.
I want the Milli Vanilli story.
Let me
Rob Farian just passed away. He just passed away. The guy who did all the music. I would love the Milli Vanilli story.
All right, I'll give you that in 1 second. But
yeah. Finish that point.
That's what the show. And we knew at the time, and we said, you know, they'll never be able to run the show again because of the music rights were going to be so expensive. And that is exactly what has happened. That, you know, they could clear the shows then, but because they wanted every hit pop song of that period on the show, they can't clear that music anymore. They can't afford to clear that music. So I don't see any possible way to run that show again unless they suddenly decide they want to spend buckets of money on doing that. And I don't see, to be fair, I don't see why that's worth it to them. Now, I mean, the fans will tell you more of us will watch, but I don't know if that's just they're saying that is enough for Disney Plus. You don't want to go to that trouble. So it's a really tough thing. It's a tough gig. You know, it happens even today. If you bought the Carol Burnett show DVD boxes that came out a few years ago, most of the musical numbers are gone. Same reason. It's not the full shows.
Yes. And you see that on SNL reruns, and you see it on. I think you used to see it on the Letterman A&E as well, on some of that stuff. That they would monkey with it, that kind of thing. You know, I have this thing in my head. One of the things that I want to do is a secondary show or whatever called Live on Letterman, and have it just literally focus on the musical aspects and the performances, because we're talking thousands of unique performances from some of the biggest musical acts in the world, and there's got to be a way to get an Apple or a Spotify involved with that, because you have this unique performance of New Kids on the Block that is available anywhere else. It was done that one time for that one event. There's got to be a way that everybody can have their little piece, and you can throw it out on the streaming somehow. You know, the Mickey Mouse Club has their own channel on one of these streaming services, that kind of a thing. And there's got to be a way to make that happen. And so everyone can have their cake and eat it too.
There is a lot of private Mickey Mouse Club stuff on YouTube that the fans have put up, but it would be nice to have, you know, the professional quality videos instead of people's old VHS tapes translated to get it up there because they've got it. They've got this footage. Let me tell you, if you want to hear the Milli Vanilli story, I'll tell you quickly.
So I just want to make a distinction.
Okay.
I said Rob Farian because Milli Vanilli, the front men were Rob and Fab. I just said
Right.
Rob Farian died. No, it was Frank Farian. Frank Farian made the music, remixer for Boney M and all that sort of stuff. I can go kind of deep
Right.
on Milli Vanilli. He just passed away. So let's tell a Milli Vanilli story.
Okay, well, it's not. I mean, it's if you know a little bit about their history, then it's not the kind of story about how wonderful Milli Vanilli was. It's more like what things were like back. First of all, between the time that show first aired and the time that was going to be aired for the reruns in those days on the channel, it came out that these guys didn't even record their own music.
That's right.
And for the one and only time on the show, they had to pull it out of the rerun and replace it with something else. I think that's the only time they ever made a major change like that on any of the shows when they originally aired.
Yep.
But the Milli Vanilli guys were a little bit different from what we were used to dealing with on the show. And, we had an intern who was a local fellow who, very Florida, very nice, very clean cut young man, not quite used to this kind of big time. And he was put in charge of taking care of the Milli Vanilli, making sure they got into the hotel, making sure they got what they wanted, et cetera, et cetera. Something not quite what he was expecting. Yep. And our late producer Steve Clements, who's a sweetheart, he's passed away recently, a few years ago now. Very, very good guy. I like him very much. In any case, I heard this. I wasn't in the meeting because they would always have the big production meetings. We weren't invited to those, but they had. But Steve Clements, I won't give his last name. Our production assistant who had this job of caring for the Milli Vanilli boys was named Tom. And so Steve Clemens started the meeting, says, I got in the office, I just found a very interesting message on my phone machine from Tom. And he wanted to know if it was okay to pay for hookers out of petty cash. You don't get that all the time on a Disney show.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a good show, a good story. I mean, it was a memorable experience. And the funny thing, of course, is most of us the people who worked on the show couldn't have cared less about most of these musical acts.
Sure.
Because they were not our generation. So everybody was like jammed up when New Kids on the Block there or somewhere. We never even went over to rehearsals. We just were in their office. There's nothing. Who wants to go see this stuff?
Oh, that's fantastic. And by the way, what's the answer to the question? Are you allowed to pay for hookers out of petty cash?
I think Tom was reimbursed. He did get reimbursed. I don't remember. I don't know if he actually took the money from pay cash or not, but I'm sure everybody on both sides was taken care of, to at least some degree. I do know for your history books, I believe the Milli Vanilli were asked to leave the Disney hotel they were booked into.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that's the case. I don't want to be scurrilous if it's not true, but I think that my memory was that was true. Didn't get that with New Kids on the Block. Those young men were behaved, I believe.
Oh yeah. It wasn't the girls; it was the moms. That's what I heard that they had to.
That's possible too.
I love you. Like we're 90 minutes. Like we're 90 minutes into this thing, and it feels like this is like okay. And everybody, this is like when we talk on the phone, or we just go and go and go and go and go.
No, it's the only people. It's okay because the only people still watching are a derelict who have who doesn't know he's watching, and a cricket who just happened to go by. So it's fine. It's okay.
I was a
little worried that this was going to become boring, so I actually brought a deck of cards in case things got slow. So
good.
It's one of those things you don't want to take any chances. You might run out of questions. do a few magic tricks,
Yeah.
Well, it's a little known thing. You're gonna wrap. I know you want to wrap up. It's a little known thing, but there were two skills you actually needed to get on the show at Letterman show at the time. Yeah. If you're a writer, one of them is you had to be a good cut jokes, and the other one was close-up magic. Not many people know that was required. You had to be good at that too. You go in the morning. You would go into Dave's office. Hey, Dave, where's the Queen of Hearts? Whoop, it's behind your ear. And Mike, the look of innocent delight that would pass over his face, you would not expect it. So okay. Get control of yourself. You got to sign off.
Yeah, Dave is very well known for his
He loves
loves the close-up magic.
What's your card, Dave? I'll find it for you. You never know where it's going to turn up.
What about coins? Do you like coins?
Coins. We kept them. That's the problem. He would keep them. I believe this is mine, right? Yeah, I came with this.
Oh God. I love Okay, yeah, I love you so much. Hey, there's
Thank
one
you.
time
Like,
Rick got mad at
okay.
me. I'm going to say this. There's one time Rick got mad at me, and I'm going to show you why.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, one time. Not mad, but like
Yeah.
he would always give me notes. And they were usually positive, constructive here. This was the one time that he got mad at me. He's like, "Take that off your set."
Oh yeah. Me
Yeah.
too. I told you the same thing.
You did. You told me the same thing, and that's what I
Yes.
was going to say. I was going to
Yeah.
say there was a commonality right there. It's the same notes. By the way, this is Sarah
It's
Palin's
like the Donald
endorsement.
Trump thing.
Sarah
What?
Palin's endorsement of the Letterman podcast. Good luck
the
with
hell-
this.
The hell with her. Come on.
I thank you so much for thank you for being my friend, and we love you so much. Thank you for
We love you
allowing
too.
me to take advantage of our friendship and have you on here from time to time. It will not be the
Oh no,
last time.
this is the most exciting thing that happens to me in a given year. So you have a pretty good idea what my years are like these days.
We're gonna figure out a way to do three comedy writers named Steve. We're gonna figure out a way to do some of these things and to expand some of these things and take some
You'll
of
have
the
to get
joy
us
that we
on
have.
separate mics.
Yeah,
Get us
well,
separate-
well.
raise and lower the temp, so people can actually hear what any of us are saying. I
my
just wish you
very-
could hear yourselves. The Alex thing from the Alex. Oh, I just wish you could hear yourselves. You're so unprofessional. All right, I'm
and-
glad I'm making you laugh.
and proud of it. You always do, and I
Thank
I
you.
adore you. I adore Lori, my wife.
Like,
Same
I
thing.
feel the same too, but we love you too.
Oh,
And
thank
we
you.
we're always happy when you come to New York to visit.
Can't wait. And the next time, hopefully, we got that little granddaughter with us because we can't.
Yeah,
wait
we wanna
introduce
meet her.
You to her. Oh, absolutely,
'Cause you-
absolutely.
I love the idea that you have a granddaughter. It just makes me so. I mean, it's like I know there's a logical reason for it. I don't know how much the public knows about it, but I still think it's kind of amazing. So I like the idea of it.
And here's the thing, okay? Yeah, she's beautiful and she's athletic and she's all these things, but you know what? My favorite thing is she's funny. She's
Well, there
funny.
you are.
She's got timing. No, she's got she's
I
got
believe you.
timing. She if she knows something is a punchline, she will accentuate it like she's funny and oh, that's my favorite thing about her. I'm so grateful that she's funny. And we're gonna
We're looking
nurture
forward to
that all together.
Okay.
I'll just do a real quick outro here and we'll say her goodbye privately. So, as you know, this is why I do the show. It's these relationships and these amazing moments, these funny things, and then add insight, of course, into the world of those who were part of the greatest body of broadcast work in history, that of David Letterman and Company. Here is one of the founding members of the company in many respects, Steve Weiner, a friend. I just adore him so much. That has been another episode of the Letterman Podcast with Mike Chisholm. Coincidentally, I am Mike Chisholm. Thank you and good night.
Boy, I know I am, and that's why I was so excited when some quick-thinking engineers developed the shower phone, the shower radio, and now, of course, this. It's the shower copier. It's a stylish symbol of executive status with only a minor risk of electrocution. Oh, Jesus. Oh, my God. Damn. God. The hell? It's apparently cold water. The hell out of here. All right.
All right, Elvis, come on in. Come on in, Elvis. There he is.
Elvis!
Shut up. You didn't see nobody here. Now, Elvis and I, we're just gonna hang out here for a little while.
Just until things blow over.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, Elvis, looky here. Elvis, she's pretty. You want her?
No, but I would like some of that pie.
Hey,
What the hell does this have to do with Elvis? Who is this guy? He doesn't even look like Elvis.
Oh, I know. It's eerie, isn't it? That's my good friend Rick.
Yeah.
I know, we didn't realize until we put the glasses on.
Yeah,
It was a
I don't want to embarrass you, but are you drunk?
He's always drunk.
I'm sorry, Elvis?
He's always drunk.
He's always drunk. Thank you very much. Go back to sleep in your pie. The real star of the piece, film coordinator Rick Scheckman. Rick, come on out here. Rick, nice job. Rick Scheckman, ladies and gentlemen. You know what we needed there? We needed some footage of a guy getting into a car and getting blown up, and you came through and got the footage. Of course, it was old, and it was grainy, and it was obviously dated, and the guy looked nothing like Paul, but it worked in the piece, and for your ongoing excellence as film coordinator, we're giving you cable television's highest honor, the coveted ACE Award. Congratulations. Yes, nice job. Rick Scheckman, ladies and gentlemen. This, the whole thing couldn't be more pathetic. So now, if you were Elvis and you're still alive, you could suddenly fall ill or get into some kind of accident. Why? Why take the chance that paramedics will dismiss you as dead for years? Play it safe and wear one of these right there. It says, "I'm Elvis and I'm alive," medical alert bracelet. Thank you, Elvis. How are you feeling?
Never been better, Dave.
Please help yourself to the hot buffet.
Oh, great. Thanks.
How long have you worked for the Wax Museum? Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah. You know, this proves one thing. Not everybody looks good in a uniform. No, hey, Shecky, you look great. But it just seems to me like the people of Panama deserve far better than this sham, this farce. This is no election. This is an insult to democracy. Somebody should go down there and take care of this Noriega guy and run all of those idiots out of office. Those people deserve far better than they're getting. And I think somebody ought to do something about it. Oh my God, something has gone. Just a minute, I'm going to see who's behind it. Hey, who? You know, I was nearly killed out there. What the hell happened? A sandbag came down and nearly got me. Biff, was it you? Did you drop that sandbag?
No.
Was it you?
No, it wasn't me, Dave.
Rooney, was it you? Are you sure? Generalissimo Ramirez, did you have anything to do with that sandbag? Are you sure? Did you have anything to do with that mustache? All right, but I'm going to get to the bottom of this. I was almost killed out here. Getting a great shave is actually one of the best parts of my day, and I think one of the secrets, although there are considerably many, is going to the same barber year after year. And that's Enrique right there. First, he drapes my face in hot towels and lets me relax and moisten up for a little bit there in the shop. Next, using his own secret European shaving technique, he gives me a wonderfully close shave every time. And finally, Enrique's own personal blended icy hot aftershave lotion. Believe me, Enrique is a skincare genius.
It's time for morning roll call at Crazy Paul's compound, located right here in the game room of my house.
It's convenient to all 5 boroughs.
Cult activities include grating cheese, asking strangers for gum.
We want gum.
And every Saturday night, a 50s style sock hop.
Never been seen. Videotape, roll it. We thought we had something there. We don't know. Look at that. And it just goes on and on. This next one is a guy dressed up like a cat. This will make you sick. Look at that. Okay, all right, that's seriously. That's enough. That's enough. That's it. Just get it out of there. Seriously. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Rick Scheckman. He is the film, like I need to introduce him, he is the film coordinator here at the Late Show. And this is interesting. You actually have a new fall show this season?
That's right. It's called The Alamo Precinct.
Uh-huh.
It's a police drama set in San Antonio, but it's unlike any show you've ever seen.
Right.
Roll it, Hal. Hi, my name is Shecky. I'm 43 years old. I enjoy computers, old movies, and I've got a great sense of humor. If you're a single woman between the ages of 21 to 50, please call me here at Singles Connection, extension 4538. Thank you.
Now, was that actually a scene from your new show?
Not exactly, Dave.
You don't even have a new show, do you?
No, Dave.
Uh-huh, okay. And by all means, don't worry about standing up straight, okay? You're fine.
Okay, Dave.
Rick Scheckman, everybody, right there. Number 7, film coordinator Rick Scheckman.
Jennifer Lopez is a hellcat in bed.
I'm here with Rick Scheckman, and as you can see, Rick is a very, very big Star Wars fan, and he has a sword there for us. Rick, show us about the sword. How does
Dave,
that work?
it's not a sword. It's a lightsaber. For over 1,000 generations, the Jedi Knights, brandishing these lightsabers, defended peace and justice in the Old Republic before Darth Vader and Emperor Palpatine joined forces to enslave the galaxy.
Everybody's name means something. We got some guys right here. There's some fellows over there. Somebody, you start there, Mike.
My name is Mike Baker, and my great-great-great-grandfather was a baker in a small Irish village.
Interesting, yeah.
That's how it works. All right, and you?
My name is Jack Farmer, and I'm the direct descendant of the 19th century Scottish dairy farmers.
See, that's how that works.
That's interesting.
Baker, farmer, Letterman. It makes perfect sense. Yeah, finally.
My name is Rick, still a virgin at the age of 43. I'm also the direct descendant of the 19th century Scottish dairy farmers.
Okay. Thanks, boys. Nice job.
Picture.
That's Shecky. He's still in his Halloween outfit. I'm here with Rick Scheckman, who is an avid fan and collector of Pokemon. Rick, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dave.
Why don't you tell us just what exactly is the Pokemon?
Dave, Pokemon is a group of 181 magical pocket monsters. In alphabetical order, you have Alakazam, Blastoise, Beedrill, Chansey, Charizard, Clefairy. That's a rare holofoil. Gyarados, he's got a Dragon Rage level of 50.
Number 9, film coordinator Rick Scheckman.
All the Late Show merchandise is made with toxic lead paint.
Good. Fine. Thank you. Thank you very much, Rick. Including his shirt. Well, because of our close connection with the Coca-Cola Company, we have the contest winner here with you tonight, with us tonight, and the Heidi Klum dress. Come on out. Here's the Diet Coke contest winner. Ladies and gentlemen, take a bow. Thank you. All right, get out of here. Okay, you're making us all sick.
It's time for Who's Taking a Smoke Break? It's film coordinator Rick Scheckman. Hey, what are you smoking, Shecky?
It's Camel Ultralights Hard Pack. It's one cool smoke.
Hey, that's great. Smoke 'em if you got 'em, Shecky.
I'm going to ask a staff member, Rick Scheckman, to put away the Late Show Bear. Shecky, put away the Late Show Bear, please. There he is. Thank you, Shecky. Nice job. That's the most exercise Shecky has had in 6 years.
In 1989, Pennsylvania Congressman Burt Wallace was severely injured while trying to send a fax of his genitals.
A little help here. Hello?
A safety reminder from Hewlett Packard.
I'm stuck. Help!
Yippee-ki-yay, Shecky.